Presentation, I'll be going through all of my work for my final major project, including my context, my evaluation, my reflectives, my paperwork, my research, and my works. I'll start with my context. In my context, I had to do a schedule, a one-page proposal, a UAL proposal, a pitch, and a draft script. My pitch was 14 pages long, and I went into detail about what I would be creating for my project. The pitch is where you first decide on what your actual idea will look like and how you will pull it off. I went through the synopsis of my production, the hooks and themes of my video, my schedule, similar productions to what I will be creating, audience profiles, my primary target audience, primary research, secondary research, visual research, equipment that I'd be using, locations that I'll be filming in, and how I'll be getting my feedback. After doing my pitch, I then started to create a script for my work. As I wasn't sure on what my idea would be, it was hard for me to do a script, and I didn't do much on my actual draft script. It wasn't until my main script that I was actually sure on what to film. For my schedule's quite weak, as I wasn't really filling it out as much as I should have been. I was using it throughout my whole project to help me decide on when things should be done, and it helped me keep on track with timings and when work needed to be handed in. I feel like if I'd filled it out more, it would have been a lot more helpful than it was, and I didn't use it to its full potential. In my one-page proposal, I had to discuss what my project would have been like before I had created it. I had to do it in third person, as if I was writing as a company rather than as myself, and I had to discuss what would be in the project, why it was unique, and who my audience would be. I then did a UAL proposal where I went into more detail about my work, and I went into detail about what I've done over the years in my college work on the course. I also had to do a bibliography of all of the Harvard referencing that I'd done in my research. I haven't put that all in yet, but I'm going to add more after this. Now onto my paperwork. For my paperwork, I had to create a budget research, a call sheet, a problem-solving log, 2 recce's because I filmed in 2 places, 2 risk assessments because I filmed in 2 places, a script, and a shot list. My budget research is where I spoke about the prices of cameras, of grips, of lightings and lights I could potentially be using, of studios that I could film in, the prices they would be, editing suites, locations, and back-to rates. I also looked into camera operators. Rather than having to film myself, I looked into people that could do that for me. And I looked into SD cards that I could purchase to film with during production. My call sheet, as I didn't have a large crew, my call sheet isn't very long. I also had to include who would be doing each part, and as I was doing it all, there wasn't any need to include other people's details, and then spoke about car hires, catering, and local emergency services. And I also put in some maps so people were aware of how to get there if I'd sent out my call sheet. The problem solving log is where you had to discuss potential problems firstly and decide how you could solve them. This was helpful when it came down to my real problems because I was able to look back and see how I would solve the problems that I've occurred with. I then wrote up the problems that I had during the project and discussed what I did to change that. I can use this problem solving log after the project because I can use it to see any problems that I have again. I'll know what to do and how to fix them. My 2 location recce's, one for Camden and one for Carnaby Street. This is the Camden one. Yeah. I discussed food, electrical supplies, parking, toilets, everything local that people would need to know about, and also like if it would be loud or if lighting would be needed, anything like that. I also put a few images of the area so people are aware where it was. Then the same thing for Carnaby Street. I also then looked into contact numbers for the area so people, if they needed to contact anyone, they'd be able to. I looked into restaurants that were in the area and the timings they would close and things like that. I then have my 2 risk assessments, which are very similar as they were both outside and would both have the same potential risks. I had to let people know how dangerous they would be and how they could sort them. I think my risk assessment could have been a bit more detailed as it was quite thin, but I did include all problems that I could think of at the time. And then just the same for this one. I'll then show you my script where I had to describe what was happening in each shot. This is the final script, not the draft one. So as I said, I put a lot more detail into this one than I did to the first one. And I explained a lot more because I knew more what I was going to be filming and what I wanted my production to look like. Whereas at the first point I didn't have an idea how I wanted it to be. My shot list is pretty similar to the script, only it talks more about what the shots will look like and how long the shots will be. So each shot's a different length. I also put what part of the poem would be in each section. I then listened through after filming and corrected it if it wasn't the same. Okay, and then that's all for my paperwork. Then my research. As you can see, I looked into different channels, so BBC 3, Channel 4, E4. I also looked into YouTube and Vice, so I went into detail about them. I did this with a few classmates, so we all did one each. We looked into demographics and also had some links so that people knew we weren't just copying the work. I did the same for Channel 4. Demographics, the target audience, and as you can see, there's comments on the side. We have bar charts and then how this helped my project. E4, they all have visuals to let the people know how it's helping. And then finally the YouTube one. And we spoke about who the audience are. I then put in some graphs and a table, and then a few more images just to make it clear who the audience are. And then for my research report, I had to look into that in more detail myself. So to start with, my introduction, what my project was about, and then my workflow diagram, which I should have stick to more, and I don't feel like I stick to it as well as I should have. I then went into detail about my questionnaires, which I did before my work. So these were the questionnaires that I sent out to my audience before creating my video, so that I could talk about what to include in the actual documentary. So as you can see, I asked them what London means to them, and I wanted them to give me answers, because then I'd use this to decide what to film and what people wanted to see. Do you enjoy poetic documentaries? And they all agreed to say they did. Would you watch a poetic documentary? And they all said yes again. And what parts of London would you like to see in the documentary? This was also another question to try and get people to tell me what they wanted to see. I then spoke about how this helped and what I would do to include this. I then got tutor feedback from my teacher, so she spoke to me about what I should look into. She said to look into a photographer called Adam Rowley, a film called Stockholm, My Love, and a documentary called Samsara, which I had already looked into. So this is the photographer that I looked into, I spoke about. And then this is the documentary, which was very similar to mine because it was filmed in a poetic style. So it uses visuals to satisfy its audience. I then sent out an online forum, but this didn't work out because I didn't get the replies. And I kept checking on the website, but I don't know if they posted it or if they didn't post it, because there was no replies every time I checked it. I then did a focus group and vox pop. These weren't as helpful as I wanted because I had to push people to give the answers. A lot of them stayed silent and they didn't really give helpful answers or answers that I could use. This is my contextual research, where I looked into other pieces of work, like a website who wrote about London, and then I looked into poems so that I could decide what poem to use for mine. This was actually the poem that I used in my actual documentary. I then tried to contact the writer of the documentary, as I wanted him to be a contributor to my work, but he also never got back to me. I sent out a few more emails to try and make it work out, but he never did. Then this is which we've already been through, my channel target audience. I also looked into BBC Two, which I hadn't done before, but there's the BBC Two, the E4, BBC Three, Channel 4, Vice. Then I have my script research, which is, this should be this. These have just moved out of place. This is where I decided or taught myself how to write a script for a documentary, as I wasn't aware of how they looked before. I thought it was just a normal script. I looked into what each section of the table meant, and then I started to work on my own script. This was when I looked into samsara in detail, my similar product research, and also another documentary called Water. I then looked into lengths of other documentaries because this helped me decide how long my documentary needed to be. I'd done some visual research and some test shots I made a horror film with a few other people. This was to go into detail about the 5-shot rule and things like that. This is some more similar products that I've looked into. Then I went into detail about the images that I chose for my mood board. So I went into detail about what they mean and who they were made for and what's the main point of the image. And then this is just my budget research. And then here's my bibliography of all the links that I looked into. We then have my reflective journal. This was an important piece of work also, as I wrote in it throughout the project, discussing what I'd done that day, so I didn't just do it and then forget. So I was able to write about how it helped me, what I could have done to make it better, and so on. Each day I did something that worked towards my project, I'd write it up. And I'd also give myself targets each day so that I knew what to improve for next time. So here's at the end of each one. I think my reflective journal was pretty weak this year as well because I didn't do as many days as I should have. So looking back, I'm unaware of what I did on some days, or I don't know what some days I actually put towards my project. Then finally, the evaluation. This is where I discussed what I did throughout the whole project. I then also did a SWOT analysis for each section so that I could really go into detail of what I thought I had done well or what I hadn't. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to my project. I then went into detail about my feedback, about my questionnaires that I did after the project. So I sent this questionnaire out with the video and then spoke about each question I got. This was a much better approach than the Vox Pops or the focus groups, as I was able to get more clearer answers and more honest answers, as people wasn't doing it face to face and didn't feel uncomfortable giving me their honest answers. And then my Wix page where I have my final video. So my horror, which I spoke about in both my research and my reflective, and this is the video that we done. And then my rough edit. I also have my main edit on here, which you just find when you click on it.
The tour of London begins in the streets of my mind. The past and present are strictly entwined. Through people and places, its heart we will find through fellow travellers and friends left behind.
Slightly out of focus, which I also discussed in my reflective journal. I also used different accents throughout the video because I wanted to show diversity, and you'll hear that throughout.
Rhythmically beating perfect. Where the ravens fly, where the heretics confess. Westminster Bridge. My poem, now penned.
I also did a few edits to each voiceover as they weren't very like the same level, because people filmed them obviously different lengths away, so I had to then edit them to make them sound better or smoother. The whole video comes to 1 minute 31. I would have preferred if the video was longer, but as the poem fit to this length, I didn't want to add any more shots and make it go over the length of the poem, or have to make people speak slower or anything like that. So I just fit the video to the poem instead.
Being perfectly in time to the bells of bow.
And also I think it's kind of sweeter when it's short,
lapping the
because
rocks,
it's more
or painted in
simple and there's
harlots,
less to have
swish
to
their
listen
locks,
to.
coax the sailors with perfume frocks.
So that's my final video. I also wrote about it here below. Okay, that's the end of my presentation.